should the introduction be?
Oh, whoa.
Hi, folks. Thanks to be here for this panel about Java news. I'm Nicolas Frankel. I will be your host today, and I will let every of the attendees introduce themselves. Please, folks.
Well, I'll go first then. My name is Jaap Coomans. I'm a software developer and architect from the Netherlands. I've been doing Java since 2002. Well, I love keeping up with Java and everything that relates to it.
Well, my name is Erik-Berndt Scheper. I'm also from the Netherlands, so I have known Jaap for a long time because we used to work at the same company. I'm also a Java architect. I've been programming and in the IT world since 1997, which is quite a long time already. And I'm currently working at the Dutch Ministry of Justice and Security, where I'm doing mostly Python, but also microservices and other sorts of things. And tomorrow I'll be doing a session about reactive messaging. So that's one of my interests topic.
Hello, I'm Nerijus Eimanavičius from Telesoftas. I'm working as IT solution architect and as Java tech team lead. I'm familiar with Java from university, so more than 10 years, but actively working in it for the last 5 years. So only well aware of new things, I would say. Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for the introduction. So as we agreed, let me introduce the first subject, the Java cadence of delivery. You might remember Java.
Nicolas,
well, I started
you weren't
with,
supposed to introduce yourself, weren't you? You haven't introduced yourself yet.
Okay, yeah, I forgot that. I'm Nicolas Frankel. I'm French, as you might guess from my accent. I've been in IT since 20 years this year. I worked mainly in Java. Now I learned Kotlin a few years ago already, so I'm very happy about that. And now I'm trying to my luck with Rust. And I work for a company called Hazelcost, as you can see from my T-shirt, but that's not the subject today. The delivery cadence of Java. I started with Java, I think it was 1.3 or 1.4, I don't remember. And then we waited some years to have Java 5 and enums and generics, and it was awesome. And then we got streams in Java 8, but it took a long time. And now every 6 months we've got a new major version. And I think that's the latest analytics showed that 60% of the developers were still using Java 8. And yeah, so what's your thought about it? Should we keep the same cadence? Was it a good idea? Should we slow down? Should the companies cope up with the cadence? What are your thoughts about that?
Shall I start with my ideas? I'm actually pretty happy with the delivery cadence. Although personally at the Dutch ministry where we're working, we're at Java 11, and we're probably moving to Java 17 when it will be available. But I'm a bit scared of that actually, which is some of the it's just a topic which I want to discuss later on when we've done this migration. Because the thing is that there used to be this backwards compatibility, and it's still there between Java 11 and Java 12, and between Java 12 and Java 13. But there's no backwards compatibility guaranteed between Java 11 and 17. And I think, well, I'm actually a bit scared of that, of what's going to happen, especially with new modules that are being that will be closed partially. So that. So first of all, I'm happy with the thing that we see new topics coming up and that they're really listening in what's interesting. I also think that it's very good that they're actually changing things. So we have sort of tryouts of things, not like in I think Java 1.4 brought a serialization. It's still a mess, and there's something that shouldn't have been like that. And so we have a way that we have found a way to bring features that are good and that have been tested, and I think that's good actually. So these are the main points that I want to bring. So first of all, I think it's good, but I'm scared of the fact that there's no backwards compatibility guaranteed between 11 and 17. So now I'll leave it to you guys.
Well, yeah, I must admit, I'm also very happy with the Cadence, especially since they're doing some preview features as well. I think it gives a better touch between the developers of the platform and the language and the users. So from that perspective, it's good. The only thing that sometimes, worries me is maybe a bit big, but it's also about compatibility. And then mainly, you'll have to keep a close eye on the non-LTS releases, because sometimes they have some more disturbing new features or limitations than the actual LTSs have, as opposed to their predecessor. So, for instance, I believe it was Java 10 or 11 where JAX-B was removed, which, if you're using it, is not still a very big deal, but you have to deal with it. And it can be not obvious that it's not on the LTS release that such changes happen.
I have a question to you and also a comment.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the comment. The LTS is just regarding the provider. So the version, it can be 11 and not be LTS for Red Hat or whatever. So I think that's the breaking change happen whenever it happens, LTS or not. And then the question is, what Java versions are you using in production? Or if you're a consultant, what Java versions are your customers using?
Well, my current customer is using Java 11, and we will probably move on to 17 somewhere after its release, with the first services that we have in our landscape. And judging from customers where my colleagues are working, that's the majority. Some are lagging behind at 8, but at least in the Netherlands, I'm not aware of big companies that are in between the LTSs, because you're right in saying it's just the vendor that says this is an LTS. But looking at the landscape right now, they're mostly synchronous on the same versions. The most are following Oracle, and you see the market following that lead as well.
And you, Nerijus?
Yeah, so like the oldest version I do remember using is 1.6, and then were a long wait after that for 1.7, and I don't remember the happiness of the new version that would bring for me. Like,
yeah, 7 was
yeah, so like an empty release with not a lot of benefits for me as a developer.
The rebranding by Oracle. This is Java 7. Now we're Oracle.
Yeah, that's the release. Yeah, and then 1.8 came, and it was packed with features and lots of things to learn, to try, and to be happy about. And with this new releases, we have these new features coming more frequently than I think we used to, and we are as a community able to adopt. In especially in companies, in the businesses, we tend to wait for a longer period of time to get the features, and then go on, explore them, and see how we apply them. And now it's more on in the path of adopting for us as Java developers the new versions with the speed of the features that they are coming out. And speaking then about these frequent, not long-term support versions and features previews, it actually allows us to run experiments on small parts of the new features from Java and learn them, try them out, see whether they would fit our working styles and so on. So that's really, I'm happy about that. And as a tech lead in Telesoftas, it's easier for me to prepare some topics for the community to explore. Like, let's see this new feature that came out with this version, and that's like small pack. We can more concentrate on it and see how it will work, and then wait for it to be stable in the APIs and so on. The move of like closing the internals and stuff, I feel like a bit nauseous for the tools we use. So they're like, for example, the Lombok story, where they use lots of internal APIs that are being locked more and more. So we don't really know what tools and in what way use those internal APIs that are being locked, and what issues we might face while upgrading to new versions. So that's one of things that I'm concerned about. But I see as well that those tools are also looking at these problems and trying to solve them differently, like moving to the plugins for Maven, for Gradle, and so on. So really, these new features that are coming sooner, you get more experience that other languages have, and this allows us to adopt new things sooner.
So since you all agree it's a good thing, then I will play the role of the French guy who says, hey, it's really bad. And like, ideally, the idea behind the like more frequent release cadence, that yes, the community could try out the new stuff, check if the new version work for them, perhaps adopt it sooner, and then on the next version, they would just like integrate the gap between like two different versions, like from n to n+1. But from what I like understand, you are on Java 11 and you will be migrating to Java 17. So the release cadence in that case doesn't help anything. You could have the same thing with Snapshot or whatever, and it could be much more saner without saying, hey, we must go, we must go, we must go, we must deliver. So what are your thoughts about that?
I think you're partially right, Nicolas. Basically, what you're saying is the bad thing is that they are releasing the new version, but no one's really using them, and we're all skipping them until like Java 17, which is, as you understood, what we're actually doing. Yes, so that is a sort of a danger. But the good thing is, and I think that's the part that you are missing, is that although it's not like a version that is used very often, the new features have been tried and tested, and people have really thought about them, and what they get is better feedback from the community, for the all these new, like the records and record classes, all these things, they have been thought about, and we've like tried this and said, no, this is not really what we wanted to have, let's try this. So I think that's really the main benefit of it. And then with the sort of, well, basically what I said, what I'm scared of is really the things that will be left out. On the other hand, that's good, actually. I really like it that they're like trying to get rid of the old cruft, or whatever how you want to call it. Do you agree with me, Nicolas?
I have a counter example, actually, regarding the community feedback and listening, is that on Java 17, they plan to remove the security manager. I thought personally it's a bad idea, or at least it's a bad idea to remove it without providing any other mechanism. And we were several people thinking the same way. And every time we tried to give feedback, we were slapped on the face saying, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And the only thing that we did manage to get is that, oh yeah, now we are not doing that breaking change that if you start with the security manager on Java 17, it won't start. Now it's still possible to start with Java 17. So I'm like, in this exact example, I'm a bit less enthusiastic than you, saying that, yeah, I'm not sure they really listen to the community, or perhaps, I don't know. But yeah, let's say I'm less positive than you regarding the feedback cycle.
Okay.
So, but it gives like a more frequent possibility for us to comment on what's coming. And in addition to that, I feel that this official snapshots, like as we can call them, like intermediate releases, are felt like more polished and easier to access than would be just to take a snapshot of ongoing Java version. So that increases adoption and the possibility to provide feedback. And maybe I would raise a hypothesis that Oracle or the teams that are developing Java are not learned yet how to listen and evaluate the feedback from community, because that's quite fresh thing.
Yeah. I also think you touched another good subject, that the alternative for the long-term support releases is actually, you can call it no-term support. So as soon as the new version comes out, the support for the old version drops. So if you're following along with the major versions every time, if you want to do that, you have to be really sharp and really spot on to and have the ability in your organization to immediately take that step. So maybe the model could benefit from an intermediate situation where you have medium-term support, something like that, where when 16 is released, you still have 6 months of support on 15, or for example. I think setup like that would make it more feasible for bigger players also to follow on in the Cadence.
And this,
what about the versioning scheme? Like, why do we call it like 18 and 19, which hints at breaking changes and not follow semantic versioning? It seems we are following marketing versioning, which doesn't give us, as Erik mentioned, that, I mean, it might be breaking, it might not be breaking. We need to check to be really, really sure. Couldn't it have been handled any other way?
Well, given the Cadence, this is actually, it's a release train model, and that doesn't really sit well with semantic versioning from that perspective. In my opinion, if you have a release train model, then you number your trains, and that's nice. And also, by doing this numbering, they leave the door open towards the future to go in a different direction with the numbering scheme. Really semantic versioning, would be interesting. They've never done that because in the past it was a mess as well. I started in 1.4 and back then I thought that meant something semantically, but it appeared it didn't.
Well, I think the problem is probably not so much the numbering. Personally, I don't really care about the numbers. I'm more about what's in it than So having another type of numbering scheme wouldn't really make much of a difference for me personally. But so basically that's what I wanted to say. I don't really care about the numbering. I said, well, at least I think it's good that what they did is they don't have this internal numbering and the public version numbering, which was really a hassle, actually. We had like version 8, which is actually 1.8, and we have, no, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
So apart from that, I'm okay with the numbering scheme.
Nerijus, that's also your opinion? You're fine with that?
Yeah, I of course think about what will happen at 100. Will we be still counting further, like the updates 1.8 and the update of 200 something? But in general, of course, it would be nice to say that it is like 2 point something, 3 point something, and we only are stable or long term on something that is in front and is bright as we right now have 11, 12, 15, 14, 17, it would be easier to count. But this is not why we are paid, why we are working on Java, not because of versions. So I also would say that this is a minor thing. And then the expectation or the vendor saying that this expect that this will might break your build is something that allows them to prepare less for those releases in middle, and then actually do the breaking changes they require to move forward at the long-term support versions. So for me that's okay, and they are giving a clear saying that it might break. And what would you do differently if the non-long-term support is not breaking the backwards compatibility? I would say that no one would do anything, because, for example, in Telesoftas, we use like 8 and 11 versions in the production, and mostly this is limited by the cloud providers that in certain services support only these versions. So
I was just about to ask you that how because what we're doing is we're deploying Docker images with built on top of an OpenJDK image, basically adopt OpenJDK image. So I know that adopt OpenJDK is a deprecator is going to move.
Adoption.
Yeah, exact. Adoption. That was the name. Yep. Yeah. But basically that's so. I was wondering, how are you using like 8 and 11? You're using services provided by a cloud provider.
So, for example, in AVS, if you use AVS EMR to run Spark jobs, there's a version limit. We cannot go past that, right? So, but if we would be building like Docker images, I think that definitely we would target 17, not waiting for other releases. And then if we have services that makes releases of the software easier, not even packing them to Docker from our end, just delivering WAR or jar, that's easier on developers, because they don't have to learn the Docker stuff. They just know that they are building service, which is microservice, and they know that they will be communicating over HTTP with the world on certain port. That's all they care. Their Docker usually is plain simple, just copy this jar in there, run it, and that's all. So why we do need to have that wrapper of Docker inside the projects. So I think this fact should also be adhered by cloud vendors, and they should move their platform versions forward with the same speed as the new Java versions are coming out. And that's not really happening right now.
Okay. Oh, that's...
I've created a poll so you can answer if you are watching this feed. So which Java version are you using in production? I think it will be interesting. As I mentioned, the latest survey, it was like 60% running 8 or less. So we can see if we are more progressive people here, or more conservative, or perhaps the same sample. I think we talked a lot about the Java Cadence, and I think, we all agree that it's probably a nice thing. And the versioning, we don't care that much. And I would like to introduce our next theme, which is Java frameworks, or as I call them, all-in-one frameworks. For example, I'm a Springboot fan, and I was a Springboot fan. I am a Springboot fan. I probably will be a Springboot fan. I was a Spring user since a long time, and when Spring Boot came, it really made my setup easier. But recently we have seen some contenders, Quarkus, Micronaut, perhaps Elidon, I don't know, Microprofile. And I'm happy to see competition, really, really happy. And I would like to know if you are using one of them, if you used Spring Boot before, how you would compare them, and, well, this kind of stuff. And of course, as long as you agree that Spring Boot is better, that will be perfect.
It's going to be a tough discussion.
Okay, I'm currently using Spring Boot in combination with Camel. And the thing is, I would have loved to try Camel Quarkus, but the problem with Camel Quarkus is that it doesn't support SOAP over HTTP, which is what our customers are using here in the judiciary landscape. So that was a bit of a setback for me, because I really liked Quarkus. I think it was actually very, very, very good. And I also think that Camel Quarkus is actually working very well as a rule. But yeah, we still miss that single feature that we need. So we're and Spring Boot does work very nicely, but the reason why I wanted to use Quarkus is that it could create a native image. And I've tried Micronaut, but I haven't been able to put Micronaut and Camel together yet.
Yeah, I don't have a framework of preference. I've used a lot during my career. I started out in Java EE 1.4, and then came in Spring, which was a delight compared to that. So done a lot of Spring as well after that. Then Java EE caught up a little bit. And recently I've done a project in Quarkus. Unfortunately, that's now over. So I'm a little bit backwards right now with Java EE 8. But I think that they all have their upsides and their downsides. Where Spring traditionally has the ease of use and you can get working pretty fast. I think since Boot, it also created some new issues that we didn't have before. Because
For example,
all the magic that happens. It's really cool that the framework does that and takes a lot of work out of your hands. But I noticed two things when working on Spring Boot projects in the past is that less experienced developers tend to have trouble understanding what really happens and where the magic comes from and what the magic entails and what. So that makes it harder for them to structure their code properly, and I see quite some mistakes from that angle. And at the same time, I did a talk on Spring Boot in combination with modules. I can't recommend doing that. And that has to do with the upcoming limitation from the platform coming with modules that completely collide with Spring's reliance on deep reflection.
Are you using modules otherwise?
Sorry?
Are you using modules otherwise?
No. And the primary the prime reason for that for me is I did it a couple of years ago, and then I did a conference talk about it as well, and that experience brought to me that the current state of modules doesn't fit well with frameworks in general. And as a consultant for larger companies in the Netherlands, you will almost always end up in an assignment where you have or need a framework. So if I were to develop a library, maybe I would use modules.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that Java modules are exactly designed for that, and only that for like framework and library developers. So within a single company, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't make much sense to modularize and say, this is not for you to use because we're working as a team and we know what our API is. And if we want to change it, then we can just do that. But as a library developer, you really need to encapsulate what is not open and need to open up what is open. So I think that Java modules is exactly designed for library developers.
No. Yeah, and back to the frameworks, you see that microprofile is catching up pretty nicely, and I think that also has to do with the fact that Jakarta EE had a setback over the past couple of years with Oracle nicely open sourcing it, but that taking a lot of time and investment was
I
going.
think the name change that is something that's going to cause a lot of headaches here and there. But the thing is, what I like with Quarkus and Micronaut is that they have like a restricted set of things that they support. Although it's missing something that we need, I think that's the what I prefer over Springboot, where just everything goes. And basically, as that means that you as a company have to choose, like, okay, am I going to do in my case web services with the CXF, or am I Access, and what's really the difference, and why do I need to choose anyway? I think that is something that maybe we could learn from. I hardly dare to speak the name, the M word, the company that bought GitHub.
But I'm wondering, I'm a GraalVM fan also, but I think that most of the time people like vastly overestimate the benefits of GraalVM. Like, why would you use GraalVM?
I would use. Oh, okay.
Coming back, like to the previous question and joining back. So, like Helidon, the framework tends to support Jakarta EE fully. So it might be the player in the framework's game that would be a thing where you want to move on if you are relying on full set of Jakarta EE. And then, of course, Micronaut and Quarkus being a subset of Jakarta EE or microprofile is something that allows them to be as light as possible and enabling more. And this competition in general, I think, forced Spring to start fiddling around with GraalVM, which led to the project Springboot Native, and we have a completely different approach from the way that Quarkus or Micronaut went to support that, and that's a good thing, right?
Agreed. Competition is good, but still. Okay, now Springboot supports or is going to support soon GraalVM, Micronaut supports GraalVM, Quarkus supports GraalVM. So why still would you use GraalVM to use native images?
Personally, if I jump in, I would use GraalVM mostly when I'm using like Lambda sort of things. Basically, what we are doing with Python is in the message. We're basically the organization where I'm currently working is basically in message processing, and we're using Python, and it just starts up and it does something with the message, and then it's gone again, right? And that is something that that I think that GraalVM fits perfectly with, that you have like this small image that basically you create an executable in and you put it and it starts up when a message comes in, and it starts up like fast and it dies away immediately afterwards. In other words, like when you have this this application of lots of libraries, then to me it doesn't make much sense to compile that into a native image, because it takes way more time than the benefit of starting up early. So basically, GraalVM is only useful for me for applications that run like milliseconds, and not applications that run like minutes or more.
So fast startup times, that makes a lot of sense.
But together with Quarkus and other frameworks, they start quite fast, even with being just jar without GraalVM already. Yeah. And that is also competed with the other Node.js or Python lambdas that are starting fast and using small space. So and I think in Spring Boot case, GraalVM has much more sense because you have this huge ecosystem of tools that is there, and you want to use them, and you want to have that instant start time. So Spring Boot native project brings that thing to Spring Boot, and there it really shines even in those simple services that are more of processing endpoints, connecting to database, or other network resources which use most of the time in the processing. So in that space, GraalVM has way more sense, I think, than just having Quarkus or other microprofile framework compiled to GraalVM, because GraalVM comes also with a cost that you have to mark everything that uses reflection and so on. So I haven't yet used the Spring Boot native project. I don't know what is the experience for the developer, but based on the promises, it should be as simple as using annotations. So I'm looking forward actually to use GraalVM more with Spring Boot than with other frameworks.
It's not as simple as using annotations. It's actually simpler. Like, you don't need to do anything. That's the promise. In some cases, you actually do need to configure the GraalVM configuration file to say, hey, like, you forgot to reflect on this, so you should put it in the final image. And I stumbled upon a bug where the profiles don't work. Actually, the profiles, they don't work. So if your Spring Boot application uses multiple profiles, and you start it with one profile, the native image, then it will find all the beans. It won't filter the beans, which is it's sad right now. So that's the limitations. However, if you don't have profiles, I mean, worst case scenario, you just run the application with the agents, the GraalVM agents that like monitors the codes. Then it creates the files for you, and it can be a Spring Boot application or any kind of application. It will work whatsoever. So, I mean, that's the stupid fallback, but yeah. Anyway, I agree the fast startup time is really a good thing, so that for like serverless or fast or however you want to call it, it's really great. When you have long-running processes, you don't care that much about the startup time. What you care is long-running performances, and for that, the JVM like beats every native code you can throw at it. I mean, that's the main selling point of the JVM. It optimizes the bad codes over time according to the workload. Whereas if you compile natively, you must infer the workload and say, oh, I will compile for this workload, and then if there is another workload, then
Yeah, I fully agree. We started on Quarkus pilot at my client, and we're now rolling it out over more services, which are all indeed long-running processes. And every time the question comes up, why aren't we using native images? They're so fast to start up, and you'll have to explain about the trade-off, and it's just not worth it. It's good as it is right now for our purpose.
Maybe GraalVM Enterprise is the thing that you need. Probably. And you'll help fund the project.
I'll bring it to the boardroom.
Also, for with the Spring Boot, the biggest pain for DevOps was like a startup time, not in the time sense, but the resource usage, because it does lots of reflection at start time and tends to use way more memory than it would need to run the workload on the regular basis. So that's a pain in managing the resources of the servers, and that requires to provision bigger machines just for a startup time. And I think if the project is not too big, the Micronaut could be a solution to that, because they have a extension that supports and translates all the bring annotations to the Micronaut ones, and then allows you to gradually migrate all your annotations to Java APIs. So,
but to be honest, Quarkus does it also.
Yeah,
does that too?
exactly. Yeah,
You
nice.
can
as
just
a rule,
remove the Spring Boot parent and replace with the Quarkus bomb, and it does the same. I mean, they are pretty smart. Huh? They are just trying to get the people, the developers, where they are. They are in Spring Boot, so they've got a lot of bridges to bring them in.
Exactly.
So
and this always works mostly.
Yeah. And that removes the need to actually deal with GraalVM stuff. Then if you have such application that's easy portable with these things to Micronaut or Quarkus, then you don't have to go with maybe Spring Boot native things and deal with those unfamiliar things to have better startup time. Because those that are promised by GraalVM are not really needed for everyone, I guess.
Yeah. One more usage for GraalVM that you don't hear a lot about, but that we actually looked into is to use it as a runtime for other languages from your Java. We did a very little proof of concept to use it as a runtime for JavaScript from a Java process, which worked really neatly, and I would have used it if we didn't discover that we actually needed Node instead of JavaScript. But it's actually it was one of the best JavaScript integrations I found when researching. So that's just one language. Also goes for multiple other languages, I guess. If you need that, that's also a good option.
So GraalVM is like the true unique rings. It's one ring to bind them all.
Looks like.
So folks, we are nearing completion time. I think it's time to have a final say. So we discussed about those frameworks. I'm still a Spring Boot fan. You didn't convince me, but I see there are other fans like Quarkus fans and also Micronaut fans. And as I mentioned, I believe that competition is really, really great, because if you have one like major actor, they tend to rest on their laurels. We saw that with perhaps Java EE for a long time, and perhaps now Spring is resting on their laurels. So it's good to have containers and people who are challenging the status quo, and perhaps Microprofile or even Jakarta EE. I mean, things happen, can be the next challengers. So I thank you a lot for your time. Dear attendees, I hope you liked the discussion. If you, I don't know if you were pretty silent or if you couldn't interact with us. In all cases, if you have questions, well, you can always ask in the chat. And I wish you a good rest of the conference. And again, thanks a lot for your time, folks. See you.
Okay, see you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
End the session, right? Right.